Good day to all our viewers and listeners, wherever you are, and welcome to another episode of the TIHA Archival Conversations, brought to you by Trans and Intersex History Africa. My name is Victor Mukasa, and I am your host, as usual. Now, at Trans and Intersex History Africa, we document, we preserve, and we honor the histories that have shaped our lives, our movement, and will be shaping our futures. And today, in everything that we do, we choose to bring it to you via this live show. Today's conversation is very special, and it takes us back to 1969. And that was apartheid South Africa, a time of deep violence, control, and division. We bring you a special guest. That guest was born within this period, Robert Hamblin. May I have Robert Hamblin on the screen so that we welcome him to the show. Robert is a multidisciplinary artist, writer, and gender activist whose work explores gender, sexuality, and human interconnectedness. His practice spans photography, painting, and installation, and his work has been exhibited both in South Africa and internationally. He is also the author of A Queer and Crooked Memoir, a deeply personal reflection on identity and humanity. Robert is someone I met over 2 decades ago during my own journey of self-discovery, a time when there was no language, a time when I was lost, confused with my own identity. And, you know, it is a privilege for me. It is an honor to be having this conversation with him today, where we complete that circle of our meeting. Robert, again, may I have you on the screen so that people can actually begin to experience you and get a part of what I have experienced. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Hi, Victor. I love that spot where you're talking about as we didn't have language. I suddenly remembered all the things we called ourselves then.
That's right. That was a very, in fact, preparing for this interview, I walked back memory lane and sat exactly in the different places we were at and remembered conversations and, you know, things that were wowing me. But also it was a moment where I was excited to meet somebody like me.
Yes, you know? Yes. And African, to meet African people that, you know, that was having the same struggles that we were. And we were also so determined then to try and find language that is African also. Right. I think in the end, we sort of realized that it's better to have an international movement to have the same language. But we did, you know, we did try it.
Those were the first footsteps.
Discover things. Yeah.
It was the first footsteps to what we have today. You know, those were the periods of the first footsteps. Yes, on the screen, on set, we also have Liesl, Theron, commonly known and dearly known as Mama Trans Africa. Liesl has walked part of that journey, has worked with Robert for part of his journey. The times that I met with Robert, they were both at Gender Dynamics with Liesl as the executive director. And it makes a lot of sense to have Liesl as part of the conversation today. And for Robert and Liesl, you know, to remind each other about, you know, things. It's so good to see that you're still together as friends, as comrades, and, you know, as siblings. So welcome to the show, Liesl.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think we will have a lot of discussions today. Like, can you remember that thing? Can you remember that thing? You know, like that, like a conversation in the lounge kind of like thing.
Right. So we're very honored to have you, Robert, today, and I'm very honored to sit with you, not just as a guest, but as part of my own history. And because you're part of my history, you made it possible for me to be a part of other people's stories. Which is, yes, because you're one of the bricks that have built me. And we are documenting that history now. It's not just a conversation that we are having. We are tracing a life that has moved through apartheid, that has moved through transition, that has moved through art, has moved through movement building, a life that has moved through parenting, and so on. A lot of the challenges that you have won as a trans person in this very challenging world. So let us begin from the beginning. And 1969, you're born in South Africa. What kind of world were you born into? Because I believe there's a lot that happened as a child for you that have shaped you. And knowing a little bit about your background, what kind of world were you born into? Please paint a better picture for us.
In a world way, it was when the first person walked on the moon. It was also a time when very recently only women had come into contraception in the world. Okay, so they were kind of radical times, but of course I couldn't feel it because I was just a little baby.
Yes.
But growing up in that time was apartheid South Africa, and so it was the strange isolation and separation between people, and something that I think many children could sense. But as you're growing up, you're being taught what it all means, and whether you're feeling something different doesn't matter, because we grow up in systems. And but except for things with race, the gender stuff was so hectic. I mean, I grew up as a girl, right? So I really felt gender in the time I was growing up. The expectations were so explicit. I mean, my child today, we've talked about this, doesn't have challenges that we had in those days of really a girl needs to wear dresses. And if you don't, it's a dramatic thing.
So very interesting. And Robert, right now, very respectfully, I would like to take you back again to your family. You just mentioned you grew up as a girl, and very respectfully, I would like, if you care, to talk about those moments with your family. Was your expression already being questioned at home, in the neighborhoods as you played? Please tell us about that.
I mean, I never had that story of like, I knew I was a boy from the beginning and insisted on it. I was quite scared of ridicule because I knew my family would be like, what are you, like, the stuff trans people deal with all the time, the denial people go into. But I was damn awkward, I'll tell you that. I just always felt so awkward in my body, and my family trying to, there's a whole chapter in my book where they try and tickle me into a dress, basically. And instead of making me laugh and into the dress, I start crying and I have such a dysphoric episode. My mom tried hard to just let me be. One of the things I loved doing was to watch the UK pop stars like Wham and George Michael and that lot. What were they doing? And Boy George. I didn't really understand that it was queer artists that were attracting me, but in retrospect, I can see that. And so then it was fashion. George Michael used to wear one earring, and so I wanted to be like him, okay? And so I would wear one earring, and my mother would let me, and she'd let me just wear shorts and not wear dresses. But, we don't live in a bubble with our families in the home. There's a whole world out there that pressures children also.
Right.
And so the neighbor would start shaming my mother. And they also didn't exactly know, and it's still like that, straight cis people often like, they think they're seeing something, but they don't know what it is, and then they get it wrong. So the neighbor would tell my mom, that means she's a lesbian. You mustn't let her wear the one earring, because of course wearing the one earring would make me a lesbian.
Yeah, those were the days of the one.
It wasn't like I started out as one. The earring was going to turn me into a lesbian. And so then my mother would panic, and go like, no, and have a whole fight with me, and then all those dramatic things would ensue. Yeah. And of course I was, and I grew very quickly, and I was strong, and my mother was also great that way. Organic feminist, I always used to say. She'd say to me, don't take nonsense from boys. And so I was always bigger than boys, and I liked protecting girls against boys that wanted to bully them, So I was often in fights with boys and that. And I never got a blue eye, so a black eye, or I never got bruised, so I obviously knew how to fight. So of course, all that changes when you become a teenager and your body changes, then that's a whole.
That was the early 70s, I believe. The early 70s. Liesl, just in comparison, I don't know how the two of you compare. What you saw during your time as a child, was it did you meet any trans people when you were young? And did you see anything like that?
Actually, no. I didn't meet in any of those years anyone that we would describe or use language, any type of language, as trans.
Yeah.
My grandmother, next to her, the neighbor, is what we would say today a very masculine presenting lesbian. Was the child of the grandmother, but extremely, and in Afrikaans language, my grandmother and all the people there would speak of that one as the mannetjie, which means that one is the man,
the little man.
Yes.
Okay. So the Gertie, I think.
Did you?
Or something like that. I can't remember exactly the name, something like that. But point is, so that was an awareness. This one is different because the woman, the people in the neighborhood, the people in the family would refer to that one as a little man. Yeah. But but further in that, I didn't know much more. Continue playing, it didn't address me. It was not about me. I didn't know.
I was conscious of queerness because my father was gay, and so my mother and him got divorced because of it. So I always had to hear every kind of slur referring to my father. So I knew every gay slur that there was by the time I was 6 years old, and that being gay wasn't cool.
It wasn't a good thing.
You were going to lose your mother's love through this. So yeah.
Right. No, but what about in school? When you finally get into school, were there any issues, or was it just smooth sailing?
No. Well, I mean, it was. I did well academically, which of course saves everybody, and I was a bit sporty, which helps a little bit also.
Yeah.
But I was awkward again. So when other girls started making their skirts short and shaving their legs, I just couldn't see the point.
Right.
And so I always had this long dress and hairy legs, and of course everyone would mock me about it, but I wouldn't care. I would just be like, I already knew feminism there. I would be like, I'm not an agent of the patriarchy. I didn't know what I was saying, but but I had an aunt that taught me that. So
wow. So it wasn't a lot. And you played with the girls or the boys or both?
No, I played mostly with girls. I didn't. Right. Boys, I just beat them up. They seemed silly to me.
Right. And during that period, when you were in primary school, for example, it is in the 70s, I believe.
Yeah.
In terms of the stage of apartheid at that time, was there still segregation that you did not know what's happening to people like you in the Black schools and the colored schools?
Yes, there was definitely still segregation in those years. I mean, I was a few years younger than you, and I did all my school years until matriculation in apartheid, which means My teachers were white.
Yeah.
Even my suited teacher was a white person,
Yes.
because there was no way a black man or woman would be allowed on the teacher team to come and teach white children, right?
Yeah.
So even my suited teacher was a white person.
Yeah, so we were learning African languages from white people in the school. And of course, those African languages were also, the curriculum was in such a way that you would, I mean, it's so painful to talk about if I think about it. You know, it's basically language that teaches you how to talk to employees, to put it politely. You know,
Right. Right.
It was that blatant. It was insane.
Yeah, or farm language. You know, like how.
Yeah, how to talk to staff and things. The power dynamic was built into it. You know, the curriculum that we had to deal with. And
from what we have had here on the shores, we've heard about, you know, challenges as people were growing up in schools. There, you know, we even as recently as the 1990s, and I'm wondering from both of you, do you think that, and what you have heard or observed, do you think things were different in the other communities at that age in the 70s? Because you kind of survived somehow in school at that time. And now we hear about other people not surviving. We hear you even talk about patriarchy, even if you didn't know exactly what it means. Was that a discourse already in the white community, and something not even, like, there was no awareness whatsoever in the other communities? Like, from your observation and your experience, could it have made it easier for
I don't know, you know, man, I can't speak for other people's experience, but of course, in the years that we worked together as activists, we were beautifully exposed to people who went through apartheid, not as white people, as black people. And, you know, some people, like, I mean, I'm talking about someone like Vanessa Ludwig. She was at a very young age, in her teenage years, already recruited to be in the ANC's military wing. You know, so that was a whole other consciousness. I mean, somebody like Pumi, what was her, how did she grow up? Do you know anything?
I don't know how Pumi grew up, but Pumi was also as a young person. You know which Pumi we speak about, Pumi Tetwa.
Oh, yes.
Was also as a very, very young person already an activist, because
she was in the Rivonia trial together with Nelson Mandela and Simon and Corley, you know. But I mean, this is now after school, but they grew up in households that were very political. Their families were academic and political, as much as people could be political then. And so I think the privilege on our side was like class-wise, you know, we had money, we had safety. But we were, you know, sometimes when I think about it, I feel bereft about the knowledge that I didn't have. And the connection that I didn't have with other people in our country and other youth, and having understandings, you know, that only came after school. And I really sometimes I feel it. I feel that it's like this whole part of life that you didn't know as a white person. You were really stupid, you know. It's like you think life looks like this, and yeah.
I think I can describe it, and this I can only now say hindsight, after I, as an adult and a conscious person and an activist, you know, all my layers of years of learning. Now, when looking back, I can realize not only we grew up privileged, because we were not in a rich privileged home, and I think
also people were seen as working class.
Working class privilege. But I mean, in this layered sections in South Africa, even working class white privilege was still much more privileged than other people.
Yeah.
But I think, besides this privileged bubble that we grew up, that by default made that there was nothing that pushed my parents to be politicized, have agency for nothing, because life is good.
The future is written for you.
The future is written. I think one of the best ways I could ever, because for years later, my mom, until maybe 15 years ago, my mom would, refused this thing of saying that we were so privileged, because she looked so much into the thing. But she and my dad worked for the government. I mean, if something in a household like ours happened, like let's say the geyser, something break, the stove, the oven, the fridge, something break, that month we can't almost come through. Like we can literally just fix that thing, right? So this is not high level of privilege. Yes, I understand to people that don't have a running water in their house and electricity. So there's layers of privilege. But as recent as I would say 15 years ago, the first time I could make my mom understand that, yes, we as a household and me as a white student or a young person had privilege, because she keep on having these fights with me.
Yeah, because there was the flow, right? You would get bursaries for university.
That's exactly
You'd be guaranteed of work when you left school.
So that was exactly how I could explain to my mom that, yes, we were privileged. Because I said to her, can you remember still the day that she and my dad and me, the three of us, went to the bank in 1991 for my student loan?
Yes, just like that. You were going to get it.
And it was a Saturday morning, because obviously people work on weekdays. I said to her, can you remember that previous evening I was, for the first time in my life, because I never went really out and clubbing and really out. I was really a very, I don't know what to say that in English. I was very conservative myself at school. So that Saturday morning when we had our appointment with the bank, that Friday evening was my first time out drinking with other students. I was drunk. Like when your vomit even smells like the alcohol, like that drunk. I puked there in the bank while we sit and wait for the bank person to see us. I mean, I was out of control still. This is even much more than hangover. I was like to that level. And we walked out and I got a student loan. And I said to my mom, can you imagine in that same 1991, two black parents and their black child was there at the bank, and that black child was so out of control, still hangover and puking in the plant there in the bank. Would that black person get a loan? And my mom said, no. I said, so I raised my case. We had privilege.
Right.
And since that day, she stopped fighting with me, because this was a real life thing that happened to us, and she realized.
And you were both there. You saw
it.
Very interesting.
I mean, they were so ashamed, They had to overly explain this child was never like this. But
that's something that we've all learned in our activism, right? It's always the personal and the real life experiences that change people's minds. Right. We can do all this academic stuff we can do, and all this language we can develop, and of course that is for posterity, for going forward. But when you tell people personal stories, that's the only thing that really shifts people, So,
Wow. I think that was a very rich conversation, actually, that needs to be explored even more. How it has shaped our movements today. But going back to Robert, we see we are getting now to a very tough period that many trans people have found very challenging. Adolescence. So when you get to adolescence, what was that like in your head, and in school, and at home? Because that's when we start changing so many things. Is there anything you want to share there?
Yeah, adolescence. We had the same adolescence.
Oh my God.
No, we didn't. I mean, I'm joking, but it's that thing that I always try to remember, to remind women, that we had the same bodily experience and the same fear for a long time before this thing happened. But so quickly. It was so quickly. Within a year, I had grown this much, and I got breasts, and I had menstruation. And so it was really very traumatic. I knew it was all coming. My mom was so great with giving information.
Yes.
But I remember, really not liking the breasts. And because before that, I was athletic, and I had pecs, little boy pecs. I used to stand in the bathroom mirror and, do this muscle thing with myself. And I had pecs, and I could fantasize when I was at night in the bathroom that I'm a boy,
Wow.
Despite my understanding of what was going on with me, I still had those fantasy times where you're alone and then suddenly these breasts happen, and you're like, what the heck? My pecs have disappeared, so it's a really painful thing. And I remember the first time that I menstruated, I hoped that I had some terrible illness, rather, that I had somehow damaged my ovaries and that they had started bleeding. Please let it just not be fertility, because I knew in my family, the moment fertility happens, your life gets limited, right? No more playing with boys. There's all this guarding that goes on that wasn't before, and insistence of participating in female rituals, which was, they were rich in our family, what the women's relationships with one another, and then the inclusion in that, and the separation from the men in the family, and all that fear and loathing in Las Vegas. I always call gender in my family. All the suspicion starts between the genders and competition between women. Now you're part of that competition when men are in the room, and it was not fun. And the uncles that start getting feely. I mean, we have all this consciousness and the Me Too movement now, and most people are on board with language, even if they still have problematic language. In those days, your uncle would touch you in front of your mother. Okay,
right.
I mean, obviously, you wouldn't, there would be limitations to that, but it was so inappropriate that if that same thing had to happen today, if an uncle in my family had to touch my daughter, you and I both, all of us, even for someone else's children, you'd kill. That's it. That person's going down. You don't care if you're going to jail.
Right.
That was going on. It's insane if I think about it.
Or you have to kiss by the uncle, whether you like him or not. And many uncles kiss on the lips.
We have, I don't know, all cultures have this, but in the Afrikaans cultures, we have this thing, and people still have it a bit, where you have to kiss people on the mouth goodbye.
Yeah.
Not even COVID changed that. And then there's opportunism that goes on with the drunk people, and
And then, sorry, in those days, then I don't know if we are still in the 70s or 80s. Had you found language for your identity? Like, what did you know about yourself at that point? Was there also language?
Yes, I think, I can't remember whether I adopted it or not, but I did. I was exposed to it when the Afrikaans newspaper Rapport, which is a Sunday newspaper, did the story with one of our other interviewees that you've interviewed, Elise Bishop. There was a running story of her in chapters for weeks long. So every Sunday I would run from Sunday school and wait for the newspaper to arrive so that I could read the next chapter about Elise, and I mean, but then it was called, okay, I won't say it on the program, SC. That was what it was called, a person of that. And I do remember other words being thrown around, like transvestite and transsexual, I think, was also then already a word used by doctors, because of course the doctors get interviewed also for that. And that was my first exposure to the possibility of somebody being able to change their body to be, they feel they are authentically.
Around which year was that?
Yeah. I don't know which year it was, but I remember I was not in high school yet. I think I was in my puberty, because I remembered thinking like, wow, maybe this can all go away if it can happen the other way around.
Wasn't her things around 85, 86?
No, not that late. No, it was much earlier than that.
82, 81?
It could have been late. It would be late 70s, early 80s.
So 82, 81 maybe.
Because I was 16 years old in 86.
Okay, so and this happened when you were younger.
And so I was maybe 12. Yeah. So anyway,
Wow.
old people trying to work out dates,
I know. I never succeed with that, actually. But
did you read the articles when you were?
No, I only read it once. It was donated
when
to
you were an adult.
Okay. Yes. In those times I didn't read it.
Of course, I mean, the context with Elise Bishop's story is fantastic, because it's so linked to apartheid in the sense that she was in the military, and that conscription at that point for young men in South Africa. And so that hard journey there. But I also heard amazing stories about other young men that had been in the army. When people were really like out, and if they were femme, and we can assume if somebody was that really so feminine when they were in the army, that they often were just sent home again when they were extremely femme. The army didn't want them. That was a consciousness that I had because of all of my uncles and older cousins that went to the army. And the other thing was that also happened is that often they had softer jobs, like they would be secretaries in
the kitchen, in the chefing, the dining room, kind of like.
There were spaces of grace that did happen. Of course, all the violent stuff also happened when they landed in the wrong environments, but they were often environments where femme identified people. I'm not talking about people, if you were masculine and gay, you were screwed, okay? Or trans, or that, you were in trouble. But femme identified trans people were often, protected in those environments. They were somehow a place for dissent, that kind of dissent.
Yeah.
Just the way you expressed yourself. You couldn't be a difficult person because then you'd be in trouble again. If you just towed the line, think Afrikaans culture is still like that. There's a lot of gay people that have key positions in Afrikaans culture where things are still separated in that. As long as they behave, it's okay.
Fit in the box that's created for them.
Yes. As long as you sit in your queer box. Don't be talking, but don't be woke.
Don't be woke. Woke is good sometimes. But
no, we are always in trouble. We are always excommunicated, her and I wherever we are in the environments. Like, we're never welcome.
But Robert, in those teenage years before you were 16, had you come across other people who you thought these people might be like me?
No. Until I was 16, no. Just, they would be like people that maybe looked like lesbians that were at school with me. And there would be some guys that people would talk about that they might be gay guys. But there was never people that were explicitly expressed themselves as feeling that they're in the wrong gender or assigned the wrong gender at least. So.
And then when did you realize
everything changed when I was 16.
Tell us about that.
So when I was 16 years old, just before my 16th birthday, I had met my father 2 years before that, my gay father, but I never made contact with him again. But when I was 16, I decided my mother wasn't going to give me a big party, and so I called my father. I imagined a gay guy would know how to throw a party for a 16-year-old. And lo and behold, he fetched me. Okay, he fetched me from my home where I lived with my mother and took me to his house, and he lived on the top of a mountain in a place called Kensington, and he had a pool there, and it was like in a Liberace movie. Okay, there were young men on flamingo lilos sitting with cocktails in the water. All of them had floppy wrists, and then there was a woman there that was his best friend, and and the theory was that she was a trans person and that she had transitioned, and I fell in love with her, and so there was this deep consciousness of what happens to somebody. I mean, I don't ever reveal her story, or the whole story is in my book about her people just being suspicious of her being trans, and how that destroyed her life, and even the kind of violence that she experienced from gay men who were so transphobic that they would call her office and say she is a SC, and or she's actually a man, and then how she would lose her work and that, and none of that was ever confirmed. Just the whispering of it, could just end someone's life, basically. And so there I became really conscious already of the danger of being a trans person and coming out. It's just impossible.
Wow. And that at that point, is that when you were thinking I'm trans? Or
yes, I did. But that was when the first time in the media there was also a story. I don't know. Did you see that story of the trans man that transitioned on carte blanche?
Yes, but that was.
What was his name?
Wasn't that in the 90s?
I don't know. Here we're looking for dates again.
But yes, I remember of the story. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
But I just remember, and I will not say the name of the person because they made me swear I will not say it. But in the middle late 90s, there was a South African national sport person that played in the national sport who transitioned from female to male.
Yeah.
If one uses that language. But anyway, so I knew of that person.
I think the first time I saw a trans person, a trans man, I don't know if we still use that language.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way he identified. And so was on a television program that also came out on Sundays. So funny how all these stories come out on
Sundays.
Yeah. In South African media, Sundays is when we look at the trans people. But but I remember like being really discouraged by it because, as always, you know, in the sort of cishet narratives, everything became about him having a penis. And so the whole program, which was also in a few episodes, was just centered around his surgery to get a penis and how that had failed more than once. And of course, you know, I suppose, you know, cishet people, and I know the producers of that program will tell you that wasn't their intention to try and discourage, you know, trans people. But that is what is the sensation always. And that is the impact. It's not maybe the intent of program makers, but the impact always. And that's why whenever I worked with media, when we worked with media, you know, that was one of the things we would say to them. Stop thinking of your intent. Stop thinking of, you know, the reader is confused. Think of impact for the trans person. Okay. What will be the impact in a young trans person's life if they see this program? And of course, again, that delayed my transition again with a decade. Only transitioned in my 30s. Much later,
It was later in the 30s. And I wanted to ask Liesl a little bit about that, but we will wait for her to come back. But for those of you who are just joining us now, this is Robert Hamblin from South Africa, a trans man, a man who has contributed a lot to who we are today as a movement, has contributed to who I am today as a proud trans man and an activist and somebody who has done, you know, his work through different dimensions, through art, photography, painting, and so many artistic things. Somebody who has educated a lot, as we will see in some of the pictures at some point. So that is who we have today. And like we said, our history, we know it better, and we will tell it ourselves so that we tell it right. And also we will preserve it ourselves so that it is never lost. So welcome back to the set, Liesl. And I wanted to ask you, even if this is not really very like during that period, even if you're not a trans identifying person, did you meet any trans people in the late 80s, early 90s in your community?
I think the first time I saw a trans person that I know was a trans person, not like gossips or magazines or news or TV, in 1991-2, in the first 2 years in the 90s, when I studied in Pretoria in the Technikon, what we called the old campus because there was 2 campuses. There was one trans woman. So that campus where it was more the arts and cook, the chef and art, and it was like the arty campus, not business. And she was a few years in advance of my study field in the catering, and she went by the nickname, you know, because there's always these nicknames. She went by the nickname Anna Plank.
Anna Plank.
Anna Plank. Right. Plank in Afrikaans is like a plank.
A plank, yeah.
And she was so thin, she was so skinny, that she went by the name Anna Plank because her name was Anna. But she was like this. Wow, there she walks. we never had contact or talk with her or nothing. She like, oh my word, there she is. You know, like she was almost not existing. You just see her.
Or like she's a magical creature.
Yeah, that then.
Like,
so, and that's basically it. That was the first time I saw, at least at the close range in person, a trans woman. But I mean, I never had a conversation or contact with her. She was just there. And she was also now 1 or 2 or 3 years in advance of the studies with me. So, you know, there's always like that thing also, you know.
Yes,
So in those early 90s, from both of you, it looks like it was not common to see a trans person.
No, and it is now, eh? Isn't it wonderful?
I think it shows how much we have transitioned.
I mean, wherever we are. I mean, in the last year, I traveled to Rome, I traveled to Mexico, and, you know, I'm often in Joburg, I've been in London, and in all those places, I saw people that were probably assigned male at birth with dresses on. In public, you know, and expressing that on a whole spectrum. They're not dragging, they are wearing feminine clothes, expressing themselves in the feminine.
Right.
Of course, you know, people like us, transgender men, you don't always know.
Yeah, that's right.
And we're seeing so many non-binary people, and it's very clear that they're non-binary, you know, that they're rejecting gender on some level or living it in their own way. Yeah, we've come a long way.
Yes.
It's very exciting
because, you know, I'm looking at the years when all this was happening, and it was even the Liesls who are now mama trans were like, wow, there she is. Wow, there she is. They have this one in the city that is walking around. So that is really a big deal. But now I want us to get to where you met, the two of you.
Yeah, because that's interesting. That was about almost 10 years later from what we talk now, because we met more or less in the early 2000s. If you think Gender Dynamics was formally founded in the year 2005, so it's in the ongoing of that.
It was about 2003 or 4.
3 or 4 that we met. I can't remember anymore on which kind of like internet platform, if it was the Yahoo Cities or...
No, I think you already had the website, Gender Dynamics.
Let's have them together on the screen so that they remember while we watch.
Hey, no. But before that photos, because when we are ready, we will show the photos. No, not these ones. This is much later, much later.
Yeah, we're working already. We've got salaries.
Yes, then we already got salaries. But so anyway, so yes, we had that website, and
there was a forum on it.
And I always try to see if we can find out where are more trans people.
Studio, please, can we have them on a big picture on the screen? Both of them.
Just the two of us on the one screen.
Yes.
So then, in those years, I always try to see if we can make contact with more trans people. We wanted to build this database, me and the other co-founder. And then I discovered this Robert Hamblin, and he didn't want to really reply my emails or talk with me. He was always like, yes, later or whatever. I don't know.
That's just a recurring theme. It wasn't personal.
But I mean, I don't know. So then I discovered somewhere that this Robert will have an exhibition in the Karoo, in the Klein Karoo National Art Festival, something like that. And this is now when the studio can show us some photos with flowers. That was
the artwork.
Yes. Yeah. So that particular exhibition was Robert was busy working on that in that town, and me and the other co-founder, who goes now by LK, we drove to this. Drive
from Cape Town. It's 4 hours.
It's a 4-hour drive that we had to go, and we booked for that weekend, like that we will go and be at this art festival or whatever. And that is, and we walked up to Robert in the exhibition space and introduced myself and say, like, this is it, here we are now. So we literally went all the way to this exhibition that was now, as we said, a 4-hour drive by car.
Right.
That's when we met each other.
Yeah.
So this exhibition, interestingly, I suppose that was in those years when you also were still dealing, and I don't know.
Yeah, no, I had already announced publicly. Look, I had a public profile because I was an artist, and also I was a media photographer, and so people recognize your name and that. And so because I was in the media, there was already articles about my planned transition. And I remember Art magazine interviewing me, and the journalist saying to me, well, this is one of the best stunts we've seen in a long time.
Wow.
Because I mean, that's always the first thing a trans person experiences, right?
For attention. For attention.
Yeah, you're doing this for attention. And so as an artist, it was seen as even more so.
It's a performance.
And so I just laughed because at that point, we were already politically informed in that. So I said to her, well, that's always the first thing that trans people have to deal with is disbelief. And you'll see how powerful medical intervention and science is for trans people at this point. But I was making these pictures that we looked at earlier. The work was called the Binary Farm, and so you'll see a very rudimentary sort of idea of gender where there's pink flowers and blue flowers on this farm,
right?
And then you have these two, and so you have these two patriarchs that are in suits, and I pointedly made the female character also in a suit because we're in this feminist time.
And when you defend gender, it is.
Yes, and of course, it was almost like a prophecy because years later we developed a language called TERF because, often, the whole movement of white feminist women became one of our biggest challenges.
Right.
And so you see them fighting with gender with one another and also protecting gender, like this image where you see she's got this little pot plant with the feminine and the gold thing on her eyes. What do you call it?
Blindfold.
A blindfold. Was my theory as an artist. How we go about gender. It's a language that's taught to us as children, and it's never really written down anywhere. But we all know it, and we just keep living by it, no matter what the damage
that's
is.
That's your guideline, yeah.
Or no matter what the truth is about gender and about sex, is we just keep living the system blindfolded, and it's a gold blindfold because you will benefit from this acting blind around what the truth is.
Right, it's valuable.
Yeah. And then there's other images where you see a young person in a room, and there's two mirrors in the room. In the one mirror, there's the feminine, and in the other mirror, there's the masculine. Yeah, and so this can be about anybody. We all have the masculine and the feminine. Obviously, this was about my journey, but I think this is a universal image that is that is relevant to anybody,
Yes.
And you can see the flowers are creeping up on me. They're about to.
Yeah. Wow. When did you do this work?
I think this was just before my physical transition started, before my medicine started, and I think it was in 2006.
I see.
We were all just really into Photoshop then.
That was a big thing.
That's how you did it. Now we do things with AI. Then you still had to sit there with your Photoshop program and stick things together, and So here's the feminine person with the masculine and the feminine, also the mirrors, and the pink flowers is creeping up on her. So, and outside you see the garden there with the gender signs in the garden, and so that's the work.
That's when we met. That's when we met.
Well, Sean, studio can bring me back. I really wanted that conversation to. It just happened between. Oh, look where he threw me. That's fine. And I just wanted to acknowledge something. So L, the one you were mentioning. L, what did you say? LC? I only remember L, the person you were mentioning.
LK, the founder, the other co-founder,
yes,
LK.
Of Gender Dynamics co-founder. It was those two guys, Robert and LK, that really embraced me during the most lost time of my life in terms of my gender identity. It was the same period. Today I'm with him, tomorrow I'm with him, and I am climbing slowly in silence. And LK showed me my first peace time. Just for people to understand in the future how far we come, it was a baby medicine spoon, something like that, that that he taught me how to play around with, you know.
Yes, all of us.
Yeah.
He took me into the first male bathroom that I'd ever been in.
Oh, he did?
At that meeting. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I was so scared. It was so ridiculous how scared I was to go into the men's bathroom. And he was like, dude, everybody there is so homophobic. They don't look left or right.
And just do their thing and
Just
go.
go in. Nobody will say anything. If they do look at you, they'll go, you know, you're looking queer anyway, so whatever.
Yeah,
and it was exactly as he said. Nobody ever, before I was passing as male, do we use that language? Let's say before I had a beard, you know, I would go into men's bathrooms all the time. I never, ever did somebody give me a trouble, you know.
Right.
It's trans women who, and the feminine find people that have the trouble.
Bigger troubles,
And that male space.
So LK has done big for people, I am sure. And it's important for us to just note that how far we have come. I will not use that baby feeder anymore, but at some point, it was my main gadget because I entered his bathroom. I was entering like a sanctuary, you know, like a museum. And I'm like, wow, this is us. So when you see him, please greet him for me and thank him for what he has contributed to us, because when he impacted knowledge, it went further, it went further, it went further. And that is how we have rolled. So
Let's just talk about the baby feeder before people think we're crazy.
Okay.
And in case the young mask identified people are watching this, you know, what it is a baby medicine spoon, which has a tube on the one side to keep medicine and then the spoon on this side. So what we used to do is to drill a hole in the tube side. And so you could use the spoon side to put it over the urethra. And, you know, then you could pee at a urinal, remember? I mean,
you could stand and pee.
You could stand and pee at a urinal because then, you know, it would come out on the side that you drilled the hole into. So, yeah. So you'd always find all these young, sort of queer-looking, you know, masked people looking for the baby section in the pharmacy because where's the spoons? Where's the spoons? Because you lost your spoon, you know, you keep losing the
Well, those who are listening right now, this is the year 2026. And the story that we are talking about was around the mid-2000s.
20 years ago,
And I don't know when these guys discovered this baby medicine feeders or spoon, but you can draw that picture yourself.
On the internet.
I'm looking it up here now. I actually find it, but I don't know. I don't know, Studio, are you able to share a link on the screen? I can try to show.
Baby medicine.
Got it. Oh, yeah.
Yes, so not the one with the pink thing that like a drip, you know.
Yeah, no, not
but the other one.
So, yeah, on that round end, you
one.
put a hole into that side where the round end is. And then
that's the thing we're talking about as the baby.
And I must just please, guys, if you're doing this, practice a lot in the shower first. Read up about it a lot.
Oh, Robert, you see, these interviews are not these conversations are not enough. Robert is the kind you should have a conversation every week. The Robert special. And how did you come to gender dynamics, Robert? What were you trying to build at that time? Did you need gender dynamics?
I think a lot of trans people go into quite a narcissistic state in the beginning of your transition, where when first of all, that state is about protecting yourself, but second of all, you have transitioned. Even before you start physically transitioned, the thing that is told to you is the unbreakable rule in society. And I think many of us get really high during that time. You know, you get really excited about this possibility, and you feel really powerful about it. I mean, you've witnessed it so many times, Liesl, you know, that power that people feel at the beginning of their transition, before they've sort of experienced the hardship of the other side. Because each side has hardship, right? And at that point, I did sort of in an organic way understand how privileged I was to be able to transition, you know, to have funds to do it. Also that in the privileged environment that I was, which was, not only being a privileged person in the sense of class and race, but also I worked in the media and in the arts world. And so there it was just like, oh, everybody was really just curious about it. I mean, I worked with actors that were doing Shakespeare. That was part of their training, how to, play gender, across gender. And so people were really accepting in that. And then I had this understanding that it could be useful if I was a public person. And I think that was I wasn't really doing the actual organizational work at that point. I was at that point, my partner was Sally Shackleton, who was the first chairperson of Gender Dynamics Board. Her and Liesl were doing all the hard shifting, pushing to get money, writing policies, organizing board meetings. My role was pretty much poster boy. And because I was in the media already, I knew every media person, and of course they were my colleagues. They were curious about me, and I was willing to talk about everything. Yes. And I wasn't, prickly. I wasn't prickly at all. I was willing to talk about anything. Prickly only came later when I was burnt out. But I was willing to, you could ask me anything, You could say to me, have you had the operation? And I wouldn't freak out. And so I just had this openness. So you saw me in the media all the time. And often medical organizations would ask me to come and talk to especially their psychology department. So I would go and I would just always talk about my transition and use my art and those small movies and the artworks we've just looked at. To just tell them the story. So, I was entertaining. I was the traveling entertainer. Person of
but also that helped gender dynamics, because when we wanted to do media training or tell journalists this is how you can ask questions to a trans person or not, they were kind of because they know Robert was somewhere there in the picture, so that they would have listened to us much more. But I would imagine if other organization just tell a journalist, this is what you should do.
It gave us access,
Yes.
So what happened was every time I was interviewed, and really I've got a thick book of interviews and things like this, and recordings on television programs that covered my transition and all that.
Or radios.
Yeah, on radio interviews. Every time I would be on the radio, it would also serve as an opportunity to talk about transgender situation in South Africa in general. It wasn't just about me. And so I had power in two ways. Power in the fact that I was talking to my colleagues, number one, and so they respected what I was saying. And secondly, I had power because now I had an organization that was backing me, that was linked to other international organizations. No matter that we were all working for free for a very long time,
for almost nothing
from our kitchens and that, but it seemed like we were an organization and an NGO, and so especially radio organizations, they'll always look for an NGO to refer to.
Yeah.
And I think at that point it was one of the first moments that people stopped calling doctors for advice on dealing with a trans subject.
Right. But actually called activists. Yeah.
So what would happen before is, something would happen to a trans person in Joburg, someone comes out or whatever, immediately medical people would be interviewed. They wouldn't even know about trans stuff, but they would be interviewed. Now the organization would be called. And to powerful
realize
and to our to the people that we were working together with. So,
and you don't realize, but your role at Gender Dynamics includes a lot beyond what you have probably talked about in spaces, because you might not want, or a lot of us don't want to talk a lot about what we have done, but on this very show you have heard a testimony of how you supported somebody who was in a dark place and how that has helped other people. Because don't think I went back to Uganda and remained silent.
Yes.
And you have no idea how many people you used to meet on break times, because you most of the conversations you had them outside. And,
outside of the conference rooms.
And how many people you uplifted during that period. You will never know unless people begin to talk about the things. But to both of you right now, did you know that you were laying foundations for the future generation, for generations? Did you?
Yeah, I didn't know that. No, I think
actually, let me make it. Let me add another layer. Hold on. Let me add another layer. Did you even know that you're laying foundations for future generations, not only in South Africa, but on the continent of Africa?
I don't think in those first 1, 2, 3 years of founding it, the first 3 years or so, but later into the years of gender dynamics, we knew that this is a very responsible role. Also, you have to understand that they later on arose that language that is being used in the donor sector as we are the mentor organization. Like we are the organization that needs to be funded, that others don't collapse. Anchor organization, they call that. So once I started realizing we are being pinpointed as an anchor organization, not only by the organizations, but by funders, then you start realizing how big is that responsibility.
I think that's an interesting question because it was one of our conflicts. I don't know. Let's talk about our conflicts that we had, because I mean these conflicts between founders are important because that's the thing that figures out what the next person does.
Next step, yes.
And I think at that point I was just really, really focused on what we do locally. And I couldn't understand. I used to get so really angry with Liesl because
I keep on doing regional work.
Then she's off on an airplane again, and and what are we doing for local people? We haven't even solved the problems locally, and we would have like really serious fights and be angry with one another about it. And I think I'd just like to bring again our chairperson of then, Sally Shackleton, who had a lot of organizational experience. And where Liesl, Liesl is a I'm gonna just talk about you while you're here. She's still like that. She's a person that works by instinct first. Okay. First, she has instinct and a deep compassion for people. The times I saw Liesl cry behind her desk, just out of love for people that were struggling. This makes me want to cry now.
That's Liesl. That's Liesl.
I think everybody knows that's part of this one. Is this compassion that drives her to tears and keeps her awake at night. So she often has just this instinct about finding help. Finding help is the one thing that Liesl has an instinct about, and the other instinct is to connect people. And so she just kept on doing this thing, and there's me pulling back, going, we haven't even solved the problems in South Africa, and you're like flitting around in Europe, and then you're here, then you're there. But having people work with us on our board, and like I said, our chairperson Sally Shackleton, she would often point out to me that no movement in the world happened in an isolated way, and that my thinking was a symptom of how I'd grown up in apartheid years, of thinking just for the self, just for the country, just for my own community, and that kind of narrow thinking. She pointed it out for me and showed me the universal thing, and that there would be no movement or any kind of liberation for South African trans people if we were not part of a bigger organization. Just like apartheid didn't come down in South Africa without it being part of a massive network of people, a bigger picture in the world, and Liesl always had that instinct. She just ran with it, and eventually I understood it. I was Mr. Grumpy for a long time.
But that was the other Robert, and that's the other fight.
And that photo is Robert Bayer, who was also on our board. He was a German guy who lived in South Africa.
But he's, by the way, the one that created the first website and logo.
That's right, yes.
Yes.
And that's from our first staff.
Oh my God.
These
people.
Tatenda, and then I'm
think
sure that's
an intern, maybe.
Yeah, that's an American intern.
Are you sure it's not Jenny from Sweden?
Oh, Sweden. Well, intern from somewhere. Okay, let's just
that might be Jenny from Sweden.
Oh, you know her? Okay.
No, but it's not her. That's not Jenny from Sweden.
No. Look at this people.
Anyway.
The last picture, please. We want to see Robert again.
Oh my goodness, you see all the hair I have then. I still have a lot of hair. It's before. So anybody that is about to transition, I want to say to you, while you're watching this, if you're going to be taking testosterone, go and look at the men on your mother's side, and whatever's happening on their heads is what's going to happen on your head. And this is what the men in my mother's family looks like. Not like that pretty boy in the picture you just saw. That hair went away so quickly.
Oh, Robert.
I wonder if we can just touch a little bit, studio, if you can support us, because you did a lot of activism work with sex workers.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you can tell us the connection there. I have a little bit more time available.
We were just about going. We were just about. We were going to talk about the marginalized trans lives, and I think that's what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Let's go in there now.
Yeah. So talk about.
Liesl actually frame it.
Yeah, that is one of the workshops that I did when I was Gender Dynamics. At some point, when Gender Dynamics had a nice board and it was more representational, and the staff was also more representational, we started working together with a sex worker organization, because we realized there's this enormous amount of transgender women that are on the street, and what the context for that was. And that previous picture where you see lists of names is, of course, the stuff that we've learned to understand. There I am with a sisterhood support group that was at Sweat, that Gender Dynamics also helped to found it, and they're big now internationally. Everybody knows them. But one of the first discoveries that we made, also by linking up with sex worker organizations internationally, was that black transgender sex workers who had the same situation as this group of people, were often so exposed to much more violence than other transgender people are. Right. And that was the founder of the sisterhood, Kim. And she made it to the age of 40, which is the thing we found out, is that most people that are in this level of life don't make it to 40. Yeah, they're 40. There's people that live in the streets, sex workers, grew up poor and without resources. And anyway, but this pictures that we're looking at right now was part of the end of our project of working together for 7 years. When I started, and so again, when we're talking about linking up, at that point, Sally Shackleton, our board chair from Gender Dynamics, married me. Actually, now I got lucky there. Now, you know why I got lucky is because she grew up in a household that was, they were ANC members since when you become a teenager, never mind your gender, you go get your ANC membership card, okay? Yeah. Many of the family had to live in exile because of it, and also all the women in her family are devout feminists, not organic feminists. Right. And so when I met her, I just I had this immediate access of someone who's in love with you and who you're gonna go fast track your feminism when you're in love with a girl that's a feminist and you're not, okay? You're gonna quickly get it all right. It's a sexual feminism.
Very quickly, otherwise it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, no, otherwise no kisses. Anyway, but so we're making little jokes. Those were, of course, the love stories of a movement, right? That's also a whole thing we can explore, like your love story in the movement.
Yes.
Also with an artist, yeah. And anyway, but what happened was Sally Shackleton, she's got her own surname, not mine. I asked her if she's going to take my surname. She said, really, sort of truly, sincerely confused, said, but why? I've got my own one.
I already have a surname. I didn't lose one.
Anyway, she became the director of the organization SWEAT, which is the Sex Workers Education and Advocacy Task Force. And with that, of course, came its own set of challenges with funding and all that kind of stuff. But I used to go visit her and take her some lunch, because at that point I wasn't working at DDX anymore. We had a real professional staff then and all that. And so I would go and visit Sally for lunch. And they had these massive support groups. A women's support group for sex workers and a men's support group. And the men's support group would get together on Thursdays. And there would be big, activism being learned, and of course the lunch that followed, and the stipend. So you can imagine the group was big because that what they called creative space was well funded. And I used to stand in her office, which was on a landing, and then it was in a warehouse, the big warehouse at the bottom where all these sex workers would come together. And I would see these little flowers between the thorns. There were just all these men sitting that, you could see most of them were gay, so they were doing sex work, or some of them didn't seem queer, but they were doing sex work for whatever reasons that people land in those situations, willingly or not. But in between were these little flowers. Those were beautiful trans women sitting there. They were so feminine. You could see all of them always arriving there exactly who they were. And I said to Sally, what is going on here? Why are they between the men? And she looked at me and she said to me, look at me. You're going to leave them alone, okay? I don't have money for you. Because, to organize costs money, right? We all know.
You have to have another separate group. It's again.
Then I said, but it's fine. I don't have anything to do at the moment. I'm finished with the project that I'm missing. Can I work with them just on my own?
Right.
And she looked at me and she goes, I don't want to hear about it. Do what you need to do, but I don't want to hear about you, okay? And don't come and do pillow talk because you're trying to help them.
No soft negotiations.
This is, of course, how I tell the story, but anybody who knows Sally will know she's so gentle. So soft-spoken, but I felt that she was being strict with me.
You felt it.
So I went downstairs, and of course, now I'm the only white man sitting there between everyone, and they are, within 5 minutes, all of those flowers are around me. And I knew, because I knew that was how it was going to work. And they were like this, and like, what you doing here, darling? And they said, you want to do business? And so,
you see, first of all, a big shout out to Sally, because I remember Sally in those days. Big shout out to you.
And I would say to them, no, I'm married. I don't want to do business, but I'm very curious. Why are you in this sitting with the men in the men's sex worker group?
Oh, yeah.
And many of them had no language or any exposure to the whole idea of them even being allowed to be
in another type of group,
to be identified as women, And then they said, what do you mean? And I was like, no, you need to be in why aren't you with the women's group? No, that wasn't allowed. Some of them had tried that. And the women's group had ejected them. And so they just gather on Thursdays with the men. And I said to them, but there's other rooms here in this place. Why haven't you asked the director? Why haven't you asked the director? So now whispering in their ears ideas that they can have, Ask the director if you can on Thursdays use the boardroom, and then how do you identify? What do you mean, how you identify? I'm like, what do you call yourself? What do they call themselves? They had words for themselves. No, they had words.
No, I don't know.
Ladies.
Oh, ladies.
Yes. They call themselves ladies.
So how do you ladies want to sit separately?
Why don't you ask for the boardroom? And I mean, that was the beginning of that. And so on Thursdays, I would go there and I didn't ask for the boardroom. They asked for the boardroom themselves. And so we started making media and things and exploring identity together. And people would often like to assign me as a teacher in that time. And I really wasn't. It was my intention to never try act as that, because, you just have to open a computer and show people one link to find themselves. We all know that. Right. When you see yourself reflected to yourself, it's greased rails from there. You will go on that journey on your own. And I pretty much did that every Thursday. I would just sort of open the computer at some link where there were
some other topic.
Trans women group in India or trans women group in South America or so. And they would just go with it. Not all of them could read, but those that would read for one another. And they would just do those workshops all on their own. It wouldn't be workshops. They would just be, they would have access to the internet like we all did when we started discovering other people.
We've seen now your activism. We've seen parts of your other work now with marginalized communities, other marginalized communities. Let's talk more about your work. The kind of your interdisciplinary work that you're doing today, the photography, the paintings, and how this come in. I think that your work is an archive, and please let's talk about what you're doing.
So one of the things that happened,
and also mention, because I have seen you exhibiting not only here not only in South Africa, but I think your exhibitions are international now.
Yeah. So in that time, I was sort of just trying to focus on my own identity, because the whole issues of self-representation and that were becoming really vigilant in the art world and in the activist world. And but what happened was I did commercial work too, and I used to photograph actors and public personalities and that for magazines for an income. And so what happened one day is the woman in the Sisterhood support group at Sweat discovered my byline at one of these. At the moment on the screen is an image of an exhibition that I did with them. After 7 years, we got an exhibition together that was at the Iziko South African National Gallery. Right. But before we developed this body of work of photographs, I had first of all not told them that I was a trans man. They discovered that on their own by going on the internet and finding me. Okay. And only then did I start talking to them about that. The second thing that they discovered was that I photograph privileged women. And so they came to me and said to me, "What's wrong with us? So you just photograph privileged women. Are we not good enough? Why are you not taking pictures of us?" And then together we started developing advocacy tools, basically.
Right.
But we also wanted to do it those were realistic images that we used. There was very few of those. But the other images that were part of my art, we did in the fashion that I tried to work. And that is to decolonize the gaze of photography. Don't work realistically. I tried to work with people where they express themselves the way they did. And I don't think there's these images, we can find them somewhere at some point. But you'll see the images I took of them were just on white backgrounds and they're blurry. And this work was called The Dance, because they explained the dance, when you're dancing. One of the things they demanded from me was, first of all, to be paid, okay, because they are sex workers, and if they show their bodies, they get paid. So I had to find money to pay them. Right. Secondly, they said to me, I can't concentrate on their poverty or on their health situations, because when I do privileged women, I ask them about their careers. And so that's what I have to focus on. And so the dance is part of a transgender sex worker's career. They work, first of all, much later than other sex workers do at night. And what they used to tell me is that they have to move, because the more you move, people can't see, perhaps the stuff that might look, reveal that you're a trans person. Mm-hmm. And so they did this movement all the time, dance around trees, and they showed me how they, and so they wanted to do the dance for the images. And so that's the work you'll see, and then they performed that, and then they did in the voice works tell their stories, and we juxtaposed the art and the real life stories in the exhibition so that people could listen to that these are not objects, these people are not to be objectified, they have their real stories, but this way we could also protect their identities. But you could listen to their voices of them telling their stories, and they helped me with the editing and all that. So and that work traveled South Africa, and then
I think it's
but it doesn't matter. It's going to be exhibited in an international museum soon. So
wow,
that's not mine.
No, I don't know why that is there. I know.
That looks like Nerdy Murphy.
No, I don't know why that is there.
Yeah, thank you. I think it is very important to bring out these stories, because they are our stories and part of our collective growth as a movement. Liesl, do you have anything? Because I want to ask Robert for something very special. But before that, if you have anything, you who knows Robert's journey, sometimes people won't want to talk about the good things they do, but you want to share with us about Robert.
I know. I think we have such a long. No, that would take another whole hour.
No, just very briefly, if you have anything.
No, I don't know anything particularly, really, because we had such a activism and outside of activism long journey together. that no, I think I'm fine for now, and we will anyway on our timeline enter some different stories. So
yeah,
Yes.
I think to keep it short, what you can
Yes.
describe for other people is, first of all, we're both on the neurodiverse spectrum, so people are like attracted to one another like that. The
Yep.
relationship will be dramatic, and of course, we adored one another.
Yeah.
Well, I adored you always. I still adore you. Yeah, whenever we had conflict, it felt to me like when you have
So
conflict
deep.
with a lover, you know, it's just like like, yeah. But yeah, it was dramatic and beautiful
Yes.
always.
Okay. So I think we will have to have Robert again because I'm enjoying.
Yes, we can have
Conversation.
Robert again on another time.
And I know that we can't exhaust it today, but I don't want young people on the continent to miss out on Robert's encouragement, because he has encouraged me in my life many years ago, decades ago. It can happen to somebody right now. Robert, we have a lot of artists, queer, but in particular trans, intersex artists. And I am inviting you today on the screen to leave a message for young, queer, or trans, whatever you decide, activists, and, you know, remind them of that role of what they do, and, you know, how it is very helpful to self and to community, or whatever wisdom you have for these young people, because a lot of them are hiding with their art because nobody is willing to say.
Okay.
So
I'm stepping aside, okay? That we have Robert.
I request that Robert, you introduce yourself as though this is
Start again.
ad hoc. That I'm Robert Hamblin from South Africa. I'm this and this and this. Let us go, studio, please.
Yeah. Okay. I am Robert Hamblin. I am an artist, and I have a public profile, and I am represented by somebody in Europe who's selling my paintings, and my activist work has been exhibited in museums. And when you look at my CV, it all looks amazing. But I don't have an income properly that can pay my bills. I am still dependent on people around me. And I have had a long time that I had to fight the shame of that. And so I'm mentioning the word shame specifically because that is what capitalism does to us, to everybody. Right. That when you don't have a lot of money, or you can't support your family financially, or if you're not an artist that is represented or making money, then somehow you're less of a person. And here's the thing. That capitalist story, don't let it do that to you. As an artist, you are the lucky one. You didn't get broken in by a system. That voice in you is still working. Where all other kids that were when they were 8, when they were 9, the system told them that the art that they were making wasn't good enough for the elite. Because when you grow up and you grow older and you want to be an artist full time, that is basically who is going to sustain you, is the elite, people with a lot of money. And to get access to that small group of people is really very difficult and mostly actually impossible. And so, but you have to make art because that's who you are, okay? And just because you can't exhibit in a big gallery or a museum is not seeing your work doesn't mean you're not an artist, or that your work couldn't mean something to someone else. And so I always suggest to people, I say to artists, whether they are successful or have access to the network or not, exhibit, exhibit, exhibit. Before I had all this exposure, okay, which was just the luck of COVID that I met somebody. It was just luck. It wasn't because I'm talented or anything. It was just luck and privilege that got me access to the system. But I say to people, if you're struggling to get access to the system or you must exhibit in your community. Find ways, an aunt or an uncle, or the way that people, do fundraising on the internet so that you can produce your work, have the paper that you need maybe to print the photographs, or the paper you need to paint on. Let other people fund you. Because that has been in history always the way that artists survived, is other people funding you because what you're doing is important. In wars, people will protect artists and hide them because we know all on an instinctive level how important the artist is in society. It's we that are protecting the emotional history. And so exhibit. Find someone to help you produce your work and just exhibit at your house and invite people. Exhibit at the community center and invite people. Have conversations. Do your work, whether the system is seeing you or not. I exhibited in many, many strange places, including a public toilet, okay, before I was ever in a gallery. And that was the most satisfying exhibitions I ever had, because the conversations that I had with people that were like me, people that wanted the world to change, and people that were interested in all the other aspects of my life. So find people to help you produce your work and exhibit wherever you can. Stick those things against the wall with press stick. Let someone else pay for the press stick also. Yeah, that is already a long message. Hello, studio.
Thank you very much. Studio, can we have the closing set right now? Thank you so much, Robert. I was just waiting for us to be brought back so that, we speak. But thank you. And I want to say once again that meeting you during my becoming years is a part of my history. It is still, you saved me from uncertainty and sitting.
Yeah, just like you did. That's just the same that you did for people, the visibility and the risk that you took. Much harder work than mine was.
Oh, thank you. But sitting here together, documenting yours.
You were always an inspiration. Incredible. And you were the compass about, what the work that needed to be done, always.
Yes, but we are going to hold space for you here today, and it is going to continue being about you. And I'm so grateful for what you have done as contribution. And I think this is the time in the future we thought about then to talk about Robert, share information about Robert, and also acknowledge what he has contributed to the development of our movement as a trans and intersex people in Africa. And so thank you so much, Robert, and Liesl, thank you so much for joining, because I know that it has been a journey. Actually, with the two of us, it's a journey.
Yeah. You have stories.
The intersection of the circle. So it is not mistake that people call you Mama Trans. Now, rest of our viewers and listeners, this was Archival Conversations featuring Robert Hamblin from South Africa. This is Trans and Intersex History Africa. My name is Victor. Until next Friday, au revoir to everyone.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.